Give me one moment. All right. Welcome to our latest Strawbees Planar, in which this is an interactive webinar where we're focusing on structuring a grant outline for funding, our favorite topic. And it's just in time and in support for Teacher Appreciation Week. So leading this workshop is by our stellar STEAM teacher team. Can you both introduce yourselves?
Sure, Lindsay, thank you. I'm Abby from North Carolina, and I teach English as a second language.
Hi, I'm Sam Yancey, and I'm a gifted education teacher and also from North Carolina.
Wonderful. So we're very happy to have you here, Sam and Abby. And we're really excited to have you guide us through your story of STEAM learning and sharing tips and tricks of your success, especially for obtaining these really wonderful resources on STEAM hands-on learning in your classrooms. So we have a lot to cover in this session. So if you have questions, let us know in the chat or use the Q&A tool. And we'll take moments to check back in during the presentation to answer your questions. We may stop the presentation to answer a few questions, but if we don't get to your question right away, we will take time at the end of the session to answer all questions. And also at the end, we have a giveaway for a STEAM starter kit. So no matter where you are from the world, Philadelphia, Costa Rica, Stockholm, Sweden, Antarctica, we will send it to you free of charge. So just stay tuned for the end of this session and we'll give away to a random participant. All right, so without further ado, take it away, Sam and Abby.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Oh, oops, I went, sorry about that. Thank you so much. Just 1 minute, let me get it ready on my end.
No problem. I'm still dreaming about the desserts. Oh, there we go.
All right, so thank you so much, everyone, for coming this afternoon or this evening, depending on your time zone. And today, Sam and I wanted to share with you some really helpful tips for how to write a grant. Sam has won thousands of dollars worth of grants every year for his program, and he's really just a wealth of knowledge. And with that in mind, we're focusing on empowering teachers and empowering students on Happy Cinco de Mayo. So I already introduced myself. My name is Abby Yancey, and I teach English as a second language in North Carolina. And this is my husband, Sam. We've been married almost 12 years now, and it's been really exciting to find out that we both really love STEAM education and love teaching with STEAM.
And as a gifted education teacher, I serve students that are academically and intellectually advanced. So together, as Abby is ESL and I with gifted education students, we kind of serve these different backgrounds and complement one another, and together bring 22 years of classroom experience. But we really want to help you as well with getting through grant writing and fundraising the kind of resources and materials that can really transform your classroom and enrich the lives of your students.
Thanks, Sam. And you may be wondering, why STEAM education? What brings an ESL teacher and a teacher of gifted students? What brings us both to STEAM education? And I just wanted to share a quick story with you. But this year I bought 8 STEAM starter kits for my students. And I was so surprised when I brought these kits out and just how their engagement went to 100%. And especially some of my reluctant or students that aren't always excited about being in school, but they were so excited and actually began building and figuring out problems right away. It was very natural. And so what I appreciate as an ESL teacher is that STEAM education, it helps you teach to kids' strengths, to what's already in there, their curiosity, their imagination. And as a teacher, it feels really good when you know that all your students can be successful in your classroom.
And to add to that, with my students, I serve students that are intellectually and academically, they're identified as intellectually and academically advanced for their age. And so, there's lots of ways to serve these kind of students. And we would do advanced math and advanced reading, but we'd also, for a portion of their class, of their service time, do STEAM education. And the great thing about students is they'll tell you exactly what they think and what they like and what they don't like. And they would always say, I'd love when we do STEAM, is there some way that we can do it more, that we can have some, kind of STEAM school? And so then it became thinking about, how can we make that happen? Because these transformative learning experiences, these opportunities to learn about these, careers they could explore and eventually, have as their career, these things that get them excited about school, how can we get the funding, creatively, so we can bring those kind of resources and experiences to our school every day. And so that's what we want to share with you. We want to help you with grant writing so that you can bring those resources to your school as well. We want to teach you this webinar focus is called Powerful Grant Writing. And we wanted to help you with writing grants that are effective. So your time is valuable, and we appreciate you being here. And if you're going to take the time to write a grant, we want you to feel confident that yours is not just one of the top grants, but when you submit it, you feel like yours is going to be the one that's going to be chosen, and that you're going to get funded and be able to, bring those materials and resources to your classroom. So this is to help you with writing powerful and effective grants. And that really starts with your story and your vision. So it may take some reflecting. You know your story and better than anyone else. So just thinking about, first off, the whole picture and how to share that with an authentic voice and organically. What excites your students? What motivates them? What are they good at? What do they want to do? And also sharing about what their needs are, what their struggles are. Grant readers, they want to hear the whole picture and see where the great things that you're doing, but also the real challenges that you're having to overcome. And so,
sorry about that, Sam.
That's okay. So, so reflecting and on what are your students' needs. This is a good time to also, share specific data. It could be demographics, socioeconomic information about your school, about your district, that just provides context to your story and your vision. Even, little anecdotes and side stories that only add further evidence and build your case, so that your vision really shines through. A lot of times, though, we settle for a lesser vision. So, dream big and ask big in your grants, knowing and believing that there are people that have the means and that want to support schools and want to support students. So it starts with a compelling story and vision.
And step 2 happens really in tandem with step 1. And step 2 is also ongoing. Imagining your students' futures is step 2. And I really love this because what helps with this process is that you really want to build empathy with your students, and you want to listen to them. What do they want out of school? Just as Sam shared in that earlier example. So you're building empathy, and also interview your stakeholders, like your parents. What do they want and imagine for their kids' futures? Reflect with your students and ask about their hopes and their dreams. And when you get this trusting relationship going with your students and you're helping them to imagine their futures, you also unite your dreams with their dreams and make an even bigger vision. Definitely, as Sam mentioned, imagine that money and resources are not a limiting factor. And once you have sort of practiced step 1 and step 2, and remember, these are ongoing, you're ready to start thinking about the different types of grants that are out there and different types of fundraisers.
So once you have your own vision and it's been combined with your students' dreams to make an even bigger vision, and you're starting to look for grants, one popular choice that so many teachers are using now is teacher fundraising sites. You may have heard of Donors Choose, Adopt a Classroom, GoFundMe. These are just some of the options. There are others out there. And actually, if you think of other ones, you can maybe put it in the chat. But this is a great option where you can simply, create a website, a project on one of these websites and get it to be posted and approved. And over time, different citizen donors, and corporate sponsors and foundation partners can contribute to your project. What I like about this is that students can follow your project and the donations that are made over time. I had a project on Donors Choose that actually my brother and his wife, who are on the webinar right now, gave to. So just getting to see people that contribute to your project and getting to share that with students and them getting to be a part of it. Probably the most exciting part is when the project is finally funded fully and the materials are sent to your class, and then they get to, students get to open up the materials, they get to start testing them out, they get to write the thank you letters and the cards. And so you're really involving them in the process of fundraising, and you're also teaching them about fundraising. And it's also something that lots of people win. It's not just a one person wins the grant. These teacher fundraising sites are funded every day. So a lot of times this is simply a matter of making a project page.
Thanks, Sam. Another great option are competitions. So competitions are a great way to get your students involved as well. And in this case, they're actually making projects and participating in a global challenge or global competition. Strawbees has two going on right now, the Strawbees Global Challenge and the Do Your Bit Challenge. And these can be really a great way for students to actually make projects and also win grants and STEAM materials for your school or your classroom.
So just an idea about why competitions are done. A lot of times, companies start these competitions just as a way to get educators and students to develop original inventions and solutions to, pressing real world issues. But there's actually a greater purpose for you as an educator with competitions, and that's that your role kind of shifts. And so you shift to more of a mentor, more of a facilitator, more of an organizer, of helping students with, developing their own creativity and their own ideas and learning how to collaborate, learning how to share their original designs and solutions. And what's great is there are prizes, and if you win, those prizes can in turn transform and enrich future classroom learning. There's lots of great prizes for these Strawbees competitions here, and they go across different age levels. But really, I would argue that the bigger point than the prizes, because you may not win, but the bigger thing that you gain from it is that students gain confidence. They learn how to, take their imagination and make something that's really meaningful and how to share it, and how to do that with others. And then they also develop, these soft skills that they can bring back into their classroom and also take into higher learning, into future work. So really, there's a greater reward that comes with competitions, even beyond the funding and the prizes.
A third option, if you're looking for grants, are local and regional grants. And Sam has had a lot of success with local grants. These tend to be very widely available, and they're also more flexible with fewer requirements and perhaps fewer forms to fill out. They may have smaller awards, but usually these are by local businesses or foundations that support schools or service organizations such as Kiwanis. And so there are smaller awards, but they fund lots of them. And these do depend on where you live. But the great thing about these are they have a higher chance of being funded, and they can help you build confidence as a grant writer if you're new to writing grants.
And as you develop confidence and your writing and researching skills continue to grow and improve, you're ready for exploring some of these grants that private companies and bigger foundations and national grants offer. These are typically more competitive. They may have more stringent and strict requirements that you have to really, and tedious requirements that you have to really make sure that you follow if you want to be considered. And yeah, there may only be one winner. But at the same time, there is often a much greater prize if you are the one that wins the grant. And it's something that with winning a grant like this, it's something that can transform your entire school for years to come. So this might be the kind of grant that you collaborate with other educators and kind of team up with to break up the tasks and write a really remarkable grant for. Just knowing that this would bring in funding and materials to your school to make an even greater change. Knowing that going into it, that it'd be worth that kind of effort. But also know that that some of these grants listed here are ongoing. So that, for example, the Eduporium, that actually has a monthly prize. So if you don't win in May, try again, you might be the June winner.
Good point, Sam. Strawbees also has a grant guide, a whole page that's designed for supporting teachers and educators as you write grants. And for this webinar, we made a simple grant planner to help you as you think about your vision and your students' vision, just to sort of take notes in and develop an outline for a grant that you may be wanting to write. So Lindsay and she emailed this out to you all earlier, but if you could just drop it in the chat again, in case some people didn't get it yet. And that way you can be taking notes and writing down some key things and key words to help you in your grant.
Also, Strawbees has a really helpful link, strawbees.com /grants. You can even just go to strawbees.com and go to the bottom of the website and click the link that says grant application help. What we developed for you is this organized drop-down menu of all these different available grants, the different types that we just talked about in the last slide. So you can easily find the grants. You don't have to just start Googling STEAM education grants. Also, on that website, I've made a list of different grant tips to help you as you're writing your grant, things that have helped me over the years with writing grants and to be successful. And also, once you've made and filled out your grant planner, if you look on the right of the screen, there's this grant application help form. You can actually fill that out and submit that, and then we can give you feedback and support in writing your grant. We can't write the grant for you, but we can be there to help you with refining and developing and making your grant more effective. So those are some great resources on the Strawbees site to help you with your grant writing process.
Oh, thanks so much. All right, so let's see. I'm just gonna end that. Thank you so much for that, Sam. And so now we're going to get to the writing part of this workshop, effective grant writing. The first thing you want to do after you've reflected and you've identified the grants is you want to pick the best time in your schedule for writing. Maybe you're a night owl like Sam or somewhat of an early morning person like me, but find the best time in your schedule that will work for you to write and hold yourself accountable, that you'll be able to hold yourself accountable to writing. You may also want to team up with fellow educators, especially if it's your first grant or there's a lot of tasks. Team up with someone to help on your team and split up the task. That way it'll be easier to get done. You also can ask your administrator for some time and maybe resources that you need to write a successful grant. Because if you think about it, administrators really are happy that you're writing a grant to support your students and you're bringing in STEAM materials. So they're going to want to support you however you need to write that grant. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, find out when the grant is due and create a timeline or checklist for each component. That way, as you complete your grant tasks, you can check them off and build some momentum as you check those grant tasks off. Another thing to think about is tailoring your vision to the grant. Maybe the grant you're applying for focuses on sustainability. If that's the case, you will want to mention how these STEAM materials or how Strawbees fits with sustainability. Or it could be for computer science, or maybe it's empowering all students to have access for computer science. In that case, you would want to mention how do the STEAM materials or how does Strawbees, QuarkBot and Microbit and Robotics Invention Board, how does that fit into computer science standards and really empowering the learners in your classroom? It's also helpful to have a short list of potential grant readers, and they can give you feedback and help you add clarity and as well as build your confidence. Finally, this is very important. You want to make sure to check and follow grant requirements. You don't want to be disqualified because you're supposed to submit a PDF instead of a Google Doc. And small things like that are really worth one more check through.
So we've talked about, coming up with your own vision and your own story. And we've talked about different kinds of grants. And we've talked about the actual writing process. And now we're thinking about the implementation of your project, because grant readers want to see that you have a realistic and reasonable project plan, and you have a well-reasoned budget. So that's kind of a good starting place, where it says provide clear accounting. It's really important that, and it makes your grant stronger if you're, the way that you have your materials listed and your accounting is very accurate. And these items that you're requesting are tied back to your vision and to your grant. They're not just random things that you've selected that add up to the amount for the grant funding you're asking. So really clear accounting helps. It's taught in items that are materials and resources that are tied to your vision, to your story. Also, grant readers want to know about your project implementation. They want to know if this is something that you're going to do over a few months, over a single year, over years to come. Typically, they do like to see that their grant is going to last for longer and impact a wider range of students. But they just want to know that you really can make your if they're going to fund your project, that you can really make your project happen, and how you're going to do that and in what time. Finally, some grants have further requirements for follow-up, and it may be they want you to write a letter, sharing about how the project went by a certain deadline. It may be they want you to send photographic evidence of the students using the materials. And in that case, you want to check and make sure your students are allowed to be photographed, or which ones are and which ones are not. And then it may be that they want to physically come to your learning site and see your students in action with those materials. So just make sure you follow up with those requirements, so that you stay in good standing with the person that's given you those grant materials, and you can be considered for future grants with them as well.
Thanks, Sam. So step 6 is the grant content. Sam and I want to share with you 10 key reasons why Strawbees is uniquely situated to be your STEAM solution. And these are concepts that will strengthen your grant writing. So in your planner, the next 10 ideas are keywords that you can use to develop an outline for the grant that you have in mind to write. And we actually thought of a lot more than 10, but for the sake of time, we're keeping it to 10.
So the reason why this is number one is it really does matter what your kids think about the resources that you're using, particularly with STEAM learning. And so you can see just below the bottom of the slide that there's all kinds of awards that Strawbees has been given. But if you look in the middle, the Kids Judge Award from the BET EdTech Conference, one of the biggest EdTech conferences every year that's held. Strawbees, out of all the EdTech solutions, was selected as the kids' choice as by the kids or as the judges. So yeah, it really matters, and this is something that you can emphasize in your grants. Is this Strawbees is something that kids love to learn with, something that kids actually selected when they had all kinds of things to choose from for STEAM learning. It was Strawbees that they actually preferred to learn with the most.
So a second feature of Strawbees to mention in your grants is that Strawbees is a new digital platform on Strawbees Learning. This will be released in June, but one thing I appreciate about this is that the focus of this platform is really how can teachers be empowered to teach STEAM and to make that a really good user experience. So there'll be teacher and student facing resources for an effective engagement of students. It's something to consider. Many schools still have some aspect of virtual learning and in-person learning. So it's important that your STEAM materials are going to be able to be used in a variety of situations, and a good digital platform will make it more accessible for the most amount of students. I also really appreciate that the lessons are aligned to standards and also the activities, which saves teacher planning time. And for Strawbees, all the activities and explorations and lessons are already aligned to the science, the next generation engineering and design science standards. But within the new Strawbees platform, they'll have further alignment with Common Core, further alignment with in GSS, and the global sustainable development goals if you're a global school and focus on these sustainable development goals. Finally, you can assign work and create your own courses, so you're really able to tailor to student interest. And that's another thing that is really empowering for classrooms and that grant readers would really love to hear about.
So we mentioned that it's kid approved. It's a great thing to mention your grants, and also that there's a digital platform to support all kinds of learning models that whether it's in person or virtual, hybrid. Also, what I love with that, same kind of thinking, and this is something to emphasize in your grant as well, is that Strawbees has the ability to be scaled up or down to support and challenge all students in your school. It's not just for, even though I serve the gifted education students in my school, I want to bring in STEAM resources that the entire school can use, that all students can benefit from. And so if you look at the catapult at the bottom left, you can see that you can make a simpler version of a catapult and explore motion and movement and projectiles. But you can also, with older students, make a much more complex model of a catapult that involves more dexterity and time, and explore potential and kinetic energy. So really, with grants, they want grant readers want to see that you're serving a wide audience of students, and this is a great thing to emphasize in your grant, is that this is a solution. Strawbees is a solution that you can really scale up or scale down to support all students in your school, regardless of age, ability, or background.
And a fourth attribute of Strawbees that will be helpful to mention in your outline is that Strawbees are adaptable for individual and collaborative STEAM learning. So whether you're teaching in small groups and it's collaborative, or you need a solution that's individualized for at-home learning or other types of learning, virtual learning, a grant reader is going to appreciate that Strawbees are adaptable for different types of groupings and different types of hybrid or online or virtual or all in person. So whatever your school situation is, Strawbees can be adaptable and it can then reach more students. And a fifth reason, which I really appreciate as an ESL teacher, is that Strawbees is very versatile. It has an open-ended system for hands-on creative learning. And as an educator, we always want students to be teaching at that highest level of Bloom's taxonomy. It's that pyramid, and create is at the top. And we always want our students to be at create or to get there in every day. But it can be a challenge with serving a wide range of students to have all students able to create. So something that is really exciting about Strawbees and that I think would be powerful for grant readers to know is that every student can create in this hands-on system. And if you're teaching with Strawbees in a classroom of 30 students, you're going to have 30 different solutions in an exploration and maybe 1,000 different ideas of possible solutions. So again, you're really able to tailor it to your students and help them develop their interests and further empower your students.
So we've talked about how grant readers want to see that you're supporting all students, but they also like to see that the STEAM resources you're asking for are able to be used in all kinds of different settings. And so Strawbees in particular is great for multiple learning settings and academic purposes. So what I mean by that is it can be used during the regular classroom setting. If you have a media center or a library, it's lightweight, it's easy to disassemble, it can be taken to a makerspace. It doesn't have to be confined to the regular school hours. It can be great in after school programs or robotics clubs after school. It can even be used, a lot in summer camps, or some schools this year will be offering summer school to help students that got behind due to COVID and time not being able to learn in person. So there's just a lot of great ways that Strawbees can be used in lots of different settings, and that's a great thing to highlight in your grant, that it's not something that's going to be used just in one classroom or in one single setting, but it can be used all over the school, on top of being used by all kinds of different students in the school.
So a seventh point that you can make in your grant is that Strawbees are budget friendly and cost effective per student per group. And this is something helpful to mention because grant readers do want to know that their dollar will have a lot of impact. So knowing that Strawbees are affordable is going to be make your grant a good choice for them, because grant readers will understand that they're reaching more students in your school, that their dollar goes farther with Strawbees, and that's ultimately what they want to do is help students learn and become better prepared for their futures.
One of the best things I think to emphasize is in your grant is that you're going to, particularly with Strawbees, get to rapidly build, test, and experiment with prototypes that mimic real life movements and mechanisms. So, sharing with them how students are going to get to, not just be learning about concepts, but they're going to get to see those concepts in action with what they're going to be creating. And so it's going to really come to life for them. It's going to be, they're going to learn about those concepts in a much deeper way, because those things are going to be realistic, and they're going to move, and they're going to be in their own hands. They're going to be making them with their own hands. So that's just a really exciting thing to get to share about in your grant, is what are students going to be creating with these materials that you're asking for. And realistic, real life type prototypes and mechanisms is an awesome thing to share in your grant. And on top of that, teaching with sustainable tinkering is a great thing to do in the classroom, and it's something you can also share about in your grant. So sharing about how, with the materials that you're requesting, you're teaching students to use maker materials as in combination with Strawbees, for instance, things like paper that you already have, maybe in the classroom or at home, aluminum foil, cardboard, things that can be tinkered with, that can be used again and again and again in a sustainable way, so that, and emphasizing your grant, so that they're understanding that you'd be teaching students how to take things that they normally would just throw out, instead find a new purpose for them, to make something that's really creative and imaginative and fun. So this concept of sustainable tinkering is a great idea to share about in your grant, that this is something that you would be teaching your students, and teaching them to do with the materials that they have.
And our last reason, number 10, it builds on number 9, but Strawbees are a reusable and long-term investment. Those are some good buzzwords to include in your grant, because as we mentioned earlier, grant readers want to know that their dollars have impact. And so what's great about Strawbees is it's not just for 1 month or for 1 year, but Strawbees can be reused over and over again throughout the years. And furthermore, what's great about Strawbees is, instead of just taking a straw and using it for your drink and then throwing it away, and then going into a landfill, instead kids get to invent and make and create and become inventors. So it really helps shift our mindset and our mind frame about how are we raising sustainable children, how are we making a sustainable future for our children and for ourselves. So it's a circular economy, and that's another great keyword to use in your grants. So we've shared 10 reasons, 10 key reasons and concepts to use in your grants, as well as some structure for how you begin writing and how you plan it out and identify grants. But what specific questions do you still have about grant writing? What are you still wondering about grant writing or even STEAM? Feel free to drop a question in the Q&A right now or in the chat. We'd love to talk to you more, and also stick around for our drawing coming up in just a minute.
Prize drawing. Yes, please share your questions. We'd love to hear what you are wondering about grant writing, fundraising. I see a question, how in depth should a project timeline be? And that's a super question. Sometimes a grant will give you, will ask you to specify certain things in your project timeline. So they actually may give you the specifics, but in general, the rule is it's better to be more specific than less specific. That said, sometimes there are, character and word limits. So you have to choose which phrases and words are most important, because maybe, there's a cutoff at 500 words. But I do think that what matters is that you You choose those phrases and words carefully. You have a clear and reasonable implementation plan, and it's well organized. You know, grant readers are going to be able to see that you put the work in to make a project timeline that is consistent with your vision, that's realistic and that could actually make sense. If you say, I'm going to do this project over 20 years, they'll say, I'm probably not going to happen. That's too long. But so yeah, looking at whatever the requirements are for the grant. So sometimes they'll tell you what they'd like you to how they'd like you to write your project timeline, but and sometimes you have a character or word limit. But yeah, if it's organized and you have those key phrases, that can go a really long way.
So we have some more questions in the chat.
So Rasmus asks, how long in general is a grant for 1,000 to 2,000 US dollars take from start to end?
So for Sam, for you having written those kinds of grants, how long does it take?
It's a good question, and you know, it really depends on, you know, the kinds of forms. If they're forms that, you know, an educator can just fill out themselves, or you have to go and find other people that you need signatures from. If it's, you know, other you know, administrators or people in your district, that can take time to get those. That maybe it's some kind of letter of recommendation. So it might take some time to get in touch with those people. It does depend on, you know, how many short answer questions they ask and what the character limit is. And so, you know, that can take some time to develop. Sometimes my strategy is is more of just wanting to sit down and just, you know, and Abby can attest to this, like, and just write it like hour after hour until it's finally done. But it's much better just to like space it out, just a few hours here and there, and then in the course of several weeks, you should have a well written grant that is at least in draft form that you can have different people look at and edit and give you feedback on. It's also helpful to look at other grants that have won in the past. Sometimes they'll share those with you, or at least share what the winning grant was about. And so you can just kind of get an idea of like, what were some of the innovative ideas that they funded? And if your idea is innovative or not. Sometimes I haven't won and I've had to say, okay, was my idea that great? and go back to the drawing board and think of a better solution. Something that really was unique, particularly now. You know, yeah, I think I just lost my train of thought, but what was I speaking about? I was sorry, I was looking at a question that in the chat, so I was trying to also follow up with the next question, but I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, so I'll just repeat the question again. How long
Sure.
in general is a grant for like for 1,000 to 2,000 US dollars take from start to end?
Yeah, I would say, you know, a few hours at a time. You know, at first, you know, several weeks that it should be. I would think, you know, 1 to 2 months max. But again, it really depends on your style. Like if you're a person that likes to just sit down and just write it, you can get it done in much less time than that. It could be just a few weeks for you, you know, a few hours here and there. It just really depends on your style. If you're more a person that likes to write just a little, you know, bit by bit, or if you're a person that likes just to sit down and write the grant and be done.
So there's a couple more questions in the chat. Todd Yancey is asking, is there a recommended writing format like APA for citing sources and sharing educational materials data, sorry. But also I think that it would depend on the grant requirements. Like they would be specific about if that was something you had to write in, what type of requirements that they're asking. And another question about writing grants for Strawbees. And it's just important to mention that Sam is one, you've written lots and lots of grants, not just for Strawbees, it's just all kinds of STEAM materials. And so the Strawbees grants actually came before you were representing Strawbees. But that's a really great question.
And I will say also that like grant writing has been enabled me to bring whatever STEAM and ed tech solutions I've wanted to bring to my classroom. So it's really just opened the door, going from a program that really didn't have enough funding even to keep having the number of teachers we needed to have for gifted education, and having to use a lot of our funding just to buy testing materials, or just to pay our teacher salaries. So we didn't really have that money for materials. But through grant writing, we have been able to have so many things, especially STEAM learning resources that we wouldn't otherwise have. And it's not just with Strawbees, it's so many different things from other companies maybe that you also use. So really, I would say instead of having the mindset of, we just don't have funding, there's really not anything we can do, to say instead, how can we be creative with our funding and look for, fundraising and grant writing opportunities that are out there so we can bring these things to our classroom and to our school.
All right, another great question here in the chat. If someone has never written a grant before, what are your top 2 pieces of advice for getting started? Since we obviously shared a lot, but what's the top 2? And also, now that you are an experienced teacher who has written many grants, what do you wish you had known when you were a beginning teacher?
Super questions. So I think the top 2 pieces of advice for someone just getting started would be to, definitely stick with those local ones in your school and district. Just asking what kind of things are available that typically, fund several teachers, that have less requirements, that are easier to complete. I know as a beginning teacher, 12 years ago, I didn't even know about grants. I didn't know there was a way to bring funding to my classroom. So just asking what is available that's local. Maybe even asking teachers in your school ones that either grants or ways that they fundraise. I think it's just really transformed. Like in 12 years time, like it wasn't something that people talked about as much. People either wrote really big grants for a giant new playground, or they didn't write grants at all. And now there are just so many more ways to fundraise and to share about your fundraising project on social media or through email. And so really the opportunities have expanded. And then as an experienced teacher who's written lots of grants, I guess that I wish that I would have known about STEAM learning. I think it would have totally changed how I thought about education. And really, it's not something that I came across until like the past 4 or 5 years. I think as a beginning teacher, you're often just, you just know you're being given in your teaching training classes. And I think STEAM education is definitely, and STEM is on the rise. But it's still something that so many teachers do not have exposure to, don't have as much training in, maybe don't have as much time to get the professional development that they would like to have in.
And I have actually a question for both of you. So, like, STEAM is a word that we throw around: hands-on learning, problem-based learning, project-based learning. What are for some people that maybe are really new to this, these terms, but maybe are really passionate to bring into the classroom, it could be actually helpful to know from your point of view why, like how you describe STEAM and why is it important in schools.
You want to go first, Abby? I've talked a lot.
Sure, Lindsay,
I want you to share.
Oh, thanks.
Great question.
So first of all, it's STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. And recently I read an article that was highlighting the possibility of every child that's in your classroom right now to become a computer software, computer designer or engineer or programmer. But basically the article was pointing out that there are more jobs in computer science available than there are people to fill it. So the STEAM movement sort of started as STEM, and that it was meant to get kids as early as kindergarten with those science, technology, engineering, mathematics skills so that one day they would be prepared for those jobs in computer science. And then the A stands for art. And really, this is the part I think, though, that Sam and I both really enjoy, and that's the design piece. So I think that bringing in art into STEM really helps students put their own flair, their own individuality, express themselves, and I think it further empowers them to be creating artistically and inventing. And as I've mentioned before, it's available for all students. It's not just, oh, some kids get to do STEAM. No, every child can. And I've mentioned it a lot, but when I'm teaching in STEAM, I feel like I'm teaching to kids' strengths. And as a teacher, that's how I always want to teach, is to kids' strengths, to what they're naturally good at, and helping them get to the content that they need and to be prepared.
It's a great answer. I can't top that, but I'll follow up by just saying that I love the art piece the most, and it's the art piece that really, to me, unlocks the science and the technology and the engineering and the math. It gives them, it makes those things have meaning and purpose and come to life. So I can't think about some concept in science without seeing the beauty or the complexity, the intricacy in it. I'm always seeing things through the lens of art, and so I think that art is a great way to both, like Abby was mentioning, get students to have a voice and to express themselves, and it's also a great way for them to see the art in their world, see the design.
Excellent. Thank you for that thorough response to these questions. Yes, and what we're all waiting for.
Yeah,
the drawing for our Strawbees prize. So you must be here in attendance to win, also because I need to get your contact information. So let's do a drawing. So I have taken everyone's names and I'm shuffling them all now. I have no way of knowing. So
shuffling.
And our winner is Mark. Mark, you are our winner for the STEAM starter kit.
Mark, you stayed just in time. He said he had to go at 6 p.m. You made it by 2 minutes.
Oh, very, very nice. You won. So
congrats, Mark.
So Mark, if you can send an email to my email address, lindsay@strawbees.com, with your contact information, I will arrange for your shipment, your free kit.
And forgot that. We just want to thank you so much for coming tonight. It really means a lot, as Sam and I are both teachers. And so thank you for coming.
And we want to let you both know that you
got this.
Write some grants.
Thank you, Christine. Appreciate you coming.
Thanks, Christine.
Good to see everyone. Hi.
Thanks, Rasmus, Jennifer.
Thanks,
Kathy.
everyone.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Aunt Khaki.
As well, yeah, that's Aunt Kagi. Hey, Aunt Kagi.
Can I stop? There we go.